it to you, Tim. Why don't you take a moment and just come away for a little while? We might have had a busy, a little chaotic week with the holidays, so this is a time where we can rest. This is a time where we can replenish and gather up more energy for the beautiful Advent season ahead. So I invite you, if you haven't done so already, just kind of get comfortable in your seats, just wiggle around, maybe stretch those muscles if they're feeling a little tight. I invite you to close your eyes if you feel called, or maybe just kind of even halfway closed. And in this moment, I invite you to connect with your breath, that beautiful breath, that prana. Let's just take a deep breath in together, breathing in, holding it, and breathing out. Releasing all the tension and worries, taking another deeper breath in now. Just a little more air, holding it for a moment. And again, letting out all the concerns, the worries, the anxieties, the thoughts, anything that may have went on before this moment. And just can keep syncing up with that breath, just your own divine rhythm, breathing in, holding for a moment, breathing out. Connecting with that divine flow that is within you. That divine flow that connects each of us right now. Connecting with that light inside of you. Knowing that each of us combined together create that greater flame. As we just sink into this peaceful state, from our head, we kind of move down into our center space, that heart area. Just feel your body relax even more. Feeling the tension in your muscles and your neck, your shoulders, your arms, your chest. Feeling just relax, feeling the tension leave your body. Our minds are clear, like a blank canvas, like a blank wall. And as I say these next words, I invite you to view the writing on the wall. View these on that blank canvas. Feel the vibrations of my speech and my voice reverberating through your mind, through your ears, through your head, and through your body. Let the meanings of these words come to you. Feel them. These words are, I serve with a loving, willing, cheerful, and humble heart. And again, I serve with a loving, willing, cheerful, and humble heart. Lastly, I serve with a loving, willing, cheerful, humble, and grateful heart. Just let those words sink in. And we take them for a few moments now to let Spirit discern what this means for us as we go into a few moments of silence. serve with a loving, willing, cheerful, humble, and grateful heart. So I invite you to, as we move out of this time of silence, to hold these ideas with you. Hang on to that sense of peace and contentment and comfort as we bring ourselves slowly back into this present moment. I invite you to wiggle your fingers, your toes, open your eyes, but stay connected to that breathing, stay connected to that breath. We just give thanks right now for the insights that came in this time of silence. And we just say, as we move forward today, thy will be done. Amen. I'm going to get my steps in. I'm running on and off. I got a couple steps here, so thank you. All right, good. Well, I've never been accused of being quiet before. This meeting's over. Well, let me just loud it up a little bit. All right, everybody awake now, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I like having that meditation first. It just kind of brings us all back into center, doesn't it? And it's always a great place to start. So I'd like to open today by just acknowledging those who are in service, because the theme today is going to be service, and we'll kind of see how this ties in to this idea. So what I'd like to do is just acknowledge anybody that served in the military before, or served as a first responder, as a teacher, or maybe you're serving in a nonprofit, or maybe you're serving your family or friends. So if you're in service or serving or have served, please just raise your hand. And if you can't, absolutely. Any kind of volunteer service, you know what? And if you can't think of anything, if you're serving just by being here and holding us in prayer today, that's a form of service. So I'm going to invite you today to really expand your mind as to what service includes, even the smallest little aspects of service. So today we're going to explore, again, this idea of sacred service and how we can express this at its highest level when we become somebody else. And the talk title is Be Somebody Else. And I know some of you are thinking, wow, that kind of goes against what we're talking about, because we're always talking about unity. Oh, be authentic, be yourself. But you're going to see where I'm going with this really quickly here. So there's a story I'd like to open up with, and it's the story about everybody, somebody, and anybody. So it begins, there was this most important job that needed to be done, and no reason not to do it. There was absolutely none. But in vital matters such as these, the thing you have to ask is, who exactly will it be who will carry out this task? Anybody could have told you that everybody knew that this was something that somebody would surely have to do. Nobody was unwilling, and anybody had the ability. But nobody thought that he was supposed to be the one. And it seemed to be a job that anybody could have done if anybody thought he was supposed to be the one. But since everybody recognized that anybody could, everybody took it for granted that somebody would. But nobody told anybody that we're aware of that he would have to be in charge of seeing to what was taken care of. And nobody took it on himself to follow through and do what everybody thought that somebody would do. When what everybody needs did not get done at all, everybody was complaining that somebody dropped the ball. Anybody then could see that it was an awful crying shame that everybody looked around for somebody to blame. Somebody should have done the job, and everybody would have, but in the end, nobody did what anybody could have. Anybody see themselves in that story? I remember when I first heard it, I'm like, oh. So I want to revisit our affirmation act, because this is what our talk is basically based on today. I serve with a loving, willing, cheerful, humble, and grateful heart. Now let's say that together once. Just repeat after me. I serve with a loving, Willing. Cheerful. Humble. And grateful heart. If you get nothing else today, nothing else, all you have to do is remember that. I made it real easy for us today. So let's break this idea down of these aspects of service, because to me it really encapsulates this whole aspect of service and how we can approach it. So first of all is the loving aspect of service. Everything begins in love, right? And when we serve out of love, I believe it takes it to a whole nother level, not just for the person serving, but giving in service, but the person receiving in service. How many of you have done a job where you've just done it grudgingly, kind of like, oh God, I have to do this, right? And then you flip that, and maybe there's a type of service or job you've done where you absolutely love what you're doing. Can you feel the difference? Like if you just think about that, like think about a job where you've done it out of obligation. Maybe it's work, maybe it's serving a elderly relative, maybe it's serving in your community, or maybe it's serving in the church. You're like, oh God, really, do I gotta do this again this year? And then think of a time where, again, you were engaged and you were so happy, so joyful. Maybe you were taking care of a child or taking care of doing something in your community that really benefited a lot of people. You saw so many people being happy. So just sit with that feeling for a second, those two opposing feelings. So we want that feeling of love, that feeling of, that sense of wanting to do something. And of course, we can flip that, because oftentimes we can use our power of imagination and some of our powers to make those tasks or maybe those times we have to serve that aren't pleasant, and we can think of the greater picture, that we're not only serving this person, but we're serving God. We're serving that Christ, that best in us. And as we do that, we grow ourselves in love. I love the story in the Gospels about Jesus with his disciples. And the disciples were sitting around, and they were bantering back and forth about, well, who's the greatest disciple? Well, I'm good with money, or I'm good with marketing, and I can do this. I'm good with people. And they were going back and forth. Jesus, who do you think is the best of us? How do we rank here? What's our ranking status? And Jesus is just sitting there, just shaking his head, probably. But he gets up. He walks, and everyone's kind of hushed for a minute, going, what's he doing? He gets up, he walks over to one of the disciples, he takes his tunic off, and he begins to wash the feet. He washes the first one, and then he washes the second one, and he keeps moving down. And by maybe, I imagine, the second or third one, the bantering stops. Because Jesus just gave an object lesson of what service truly means. Not only to serve, but to be a servant leader by the most humble of acts, washing the feet. But it was an important act in those days. And again, it wasn't the mighty or exalted act or the act that gets all the press. No, it was that simple act of just getting down and washing the feet. And he taught them an important lesson, and that's a lesson we can all learn too, that it doesn't have to be some great, magnificent act that we do. Just the simplest act done in love. Some of you might have known that I served in the Army National Guard here in California for a few years. And I made the rank of sergeant. And one of the first things they taught us in our NCO training is to always take care of your troops first. Your troops always come first. If there's hot chow served, guess what? I want to make sure all my troops get fed, get hot chow before I go get hot chow. And if I got to eat an MRE in a bag and all my guys get fed, that's what I want. And that was the crux of leadership in the Army and in many of the services, is to always take care of your men first. And I saw that demonstrated by my senior NCOs. The Sergeant Major going out to God knows where we were camped out, because most of all, if people couldn't read a map, they couldn't find us. We were way out in the bushes somewhere. But the Sergeant Major would find us, and he would make sure at least we got something hot, some kind of good chow. He'd check up on us, make sure we had everything we needed as far as equipment and gear. And then he'd go to the next pot the next group, the next platoon, check on them. And so that was a demonstration of service to me too. Even though it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, it was cold, and that man must have been tired. He was much older than I was. I was just some scrawny little 18-year-old with all kinds of energy. But he had that drive in him. He had that love for his troops. And that love was reflected back to him and the way we served him. So love, it all begins in love. The next step in our sacred service is to be willing. To be willing to serve, to be willing to say yes. I love our scripture today. It's from Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8 from the World English Bible. And it says, I hear the Lord's voice saying, whom shall I send? Whom will go for us? Then I said, here I am. Send me. How many times do we say that? Are willing to jump up and say yes. I remember that same experience in the military when I was in boot camp. The thing I always heard was, never volunteer for anything. Never volunteer for anything, because usually it's going to be some kind of really crappy detail. Washing pots or pans or something else. But I noticed that every time I said yes, maybe it was a bad job. Maybe it wasn't such a pleasant job, but I gained something out of that. I remember my sergeant came to me and said, we need a driver for the battalion commander. Would you do it? You're not qualified yet in your MOS. I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds kind of cool. So I drove for the battalion commander, who was a major, for 2 weeks during our annual training, and drove a Jeep, and I was on call 24/7. He'd wake me up at 2 in the morning and go, hey, we gotta go. I'd wake up and go. But I learned so much from him, and I got so much valuable information and insight. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he had been through all these leadership trainings. He was the battalion commander. I met people. I met other NCOs. I met other officers. So later on in my career, as I wanted to do other things, I had connections that I made simply by saying yes, simply by being willing. So this is something that each of us can do in every single moment. And we know when that time comes, we hear that call, right? Have you ever felt that call that you needed to do something? Maybe it was to volunteer for an organization. Maybe it was simply to go rake leaves out in front of a building somewhere that you serve. We all have that call somewhere. And when we say yes, magical things can happen. Whether we heed the call or decide to not heed the call is entirely up to us. The next part, the next step in sacred service, in this idea of being somebody else, is to do it cheerfully. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. And again, I talked about that grudging, when I talked about love, I was talking about serving. We could either serve grudgingly, right, or out of obligation, or we can be excited, we can be cheerful about it. Because what inspires you? Is it being around a person that's like, oh God, well, let me show you the ropes here, and it's just such a drag working here or doing things around here, well, I guess this is what we do. Or is it the person that's like, well, let me show you how things go. This is what we can do, and we do it this way, but hey, if you've got some ideas, I'd love to hear them. Let me introduce you around. So when we're cheerful, we have that countenance. It's like a magnet. It draws people to us, and it draws us help. We don't have to do this by ourselves, and when we're cheerful about it, cheerful in our duties and our activities we do in service, that it draws people to us. I just love that Tim, when he was doing the song and stuff, I just really appreciated that cheerful, that cheerful aspect of it. Recently, I attended a memorial service for a friend of mine, and he was involved at Unity San Diego for many years, and his wife is actually the senior minister there now, but she was the youth director there for many, many, many years. But Tony would be her foil. Anything she asked him to do, he would do. And I imagine maybe some of that was because they were married and he wanted to be a good husband and just do what his wife told him to do. But I believe Tony had a giving heart. The man had a huge heart. And whatever he did, he always did it with a smile on his face. I never saw him whether he was cooking pancakes in the back, whether he was working a game at the fall festival for the kids, or whether he was helping out with crafts or leading hikes and campouts, that man always had a smile on his face no matter how he served. And at his memorial, it was funny because, well, it wasn't funny, it was a testament to this man's countenance of how he served so many, in many different areas, not just church. He served in the Scouts, he served in the recovery community, and at his memorial, we actually had to add seats. We had plenty of seats in the sanctuary, or so we thought, but we had to add seats. We were bringing in chairs. There must have been 200 people at his service. It was beautiful. And a testament again to not only this man's service, but his countenance and how he served. The next step is humility. Humility in our service. Service can be made up of the simplest of acts. We talk about the mustard seed, right? Jesus said all it takes is a mustard seed to move a mountain. And that's all it has to be for us. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. We don't have to run the whole organization or start a whole new organization or do some great thing. Rather, we can serve by the simple acts. Just you sitting here today, you're serving. You're serving and creating a higher consciousness in not only the spiritual community, but our community at large. Many of you serve here on the platform, or doing music, or providing snacks, or helping out with the grounds. There's so many different ways. And no one is better than the other. They're all essential, and they're all worthy and valuable. This idea of humbleness is also serving in anonymity. I think in our society these days, sometimes we crave recognition. We want to let everybody know what we've done. We're on Facebook, we're posting pictures. Hey, look at me, I'm Reagan, or I'm serving in this way, or I'm serving that way. But blessed is the one oftentimes that serves in anonymity, that just gives in anonymity. And that's why I like that idea of somebody else. I thought about it a while back, and I had wanted to start a movement, and I still do, called the Somebody Else Movement. And that would be where the idea came to me like on the trail, where I hike these trails a lot. And oftentimes you'll see trash, or people leave their dog poop in little bags in the middle of the trail. And so it got to thinking, like I'll walk by it, and when you think about it, when you walk by something, you're going, somebody ought to take care of that. Or you see something that needs to be fixed, there ought to be, when you say they or somebody else, you're really talking about the need for you to do it, or start the process in some way. So again, this idea of somebody else, I started thinking, well, I'm not somebody else. I'm that person I've been waiting for. So now on my hikes, I take a little bag, or if there's a trash can, I'll pick up a little. If I start getting that up, if I get that idea in my head that somebody else ought to do it, I try and do what I can, if it's possible. Pick up that trash. And I thought about having like little jackets made up, like little pickers and little, those vests, those construction vests, saying somebody else on the back. And when somebody goes, oh, what's your name? What's your organization? I'm somebody else. And it'd be a fun way to remain anonymous, but just that idea of, we're all somebody else. And if it's something we can't handle directly, we can pray on it, we can at least affirm a good thought for it, that this idea will attract more people that might be able to do it. And that can happen. So again, this idea of anonymity, doing things, as they say in the Gospels, not letting the right foot know what the left foot is doing. The last part of service, and I say this for last because, not the most important, but it's right up there. It's gratitude. Gratitude. So often we thank, our veterans and our first responders and everybody for their service, but we can also widen that circle like we did at the beginning of my talk, right? Teachers and administrators and mentors and mothers and fathers, everybody serves in some capacity. Recently I was in a study group, and we were talking about this idea, and there was a lady that she felt really, really bad because she said, I used to serve in so many ways. I used to be able to do this and do that, but now I've had this ailment, and and there were tears coming to her eyes. And I said, I said, my friend, your presence being here is enough. Your presence of positive thinking, of saying positive things and encouraging others, that's enough. So we all are enough. I want to stress that point, that we all are enough. Even no matter what we can do, there's some small act or small thought or small gesture that we can contribute. We can be grateful in the opportunities we have. I mean, think about how many opportunities we have to serve others during the day, during just one day that come up. Maybe it's helping somebody with their groceries. Maybe it's picking up a piece of trash that's in front of the church. Maybe it's, getting a glass of water for somebody. But these simplest of acts that we can do, and we can be grateful for these opportunities that come up. And in our time of reflection, and as we strive to be better, strive to serve more, we're more aware of the opportunities as they come up. They don't pass us by. We're grateful for the blessings and the good that come from our serving. Oftentimes we'll do a service, and we don't get to see how it turns out. We don't get to see the end result. It's almost like a ship cutting through the water and leaving wakes, and those wakes just ripple out to the shore. But we can know in faith that as we continue on to push forward in service, that those blessings are magnifying and rippling out. The other element of service I want to talk about is being a good receiver. That's a new thought, right? Most of us like to give more than we like to receive. Would you agree? I know I'm that way. But this idea of being a good receiver, that when somebody does a kindness or serves us, or somebody else comes along and maybe covers our tab or maybe does something for us without being asked, we can simply say thank you. And not worry about, oh my gosh, well, they did this for me. Now I got to go do something better for them. And you keep wanting to one-up each other. We see this a lot at Christmas, right? Somebody gives us a gift, and then we automatically feel like, oh, I didn't get them anything. Oh gosh. But I want you to really anchor into this concept of saying, you know what? It's okay to receive, because what it does is it brings that giver joy. They get that joy of service. And we're contributing by that, so it just kind of creates this circle of good. So being a good receiver, I'd love for you to remember that as we move through this holiday season. So in closing, there's a reading I have, and it really highlights this idea of humility, love, anonymity, gratitude, all these things rolled into one. It's called When You Thought I Wasn't Looking. And it's written by a daughter to her mother, actually. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you feed a stray cat, and I learned that it was good to be kind to animals. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make my favorite cake, and I learned the little things can be special things in life. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make a meal and take it to a friend who was sick, and I learned that we all have to help to take care of each other. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you give of your time and your energy and your money to help people who had nothing, and I learned that those who have something should give to those who don't. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you take care of our house and everyone in it, and I learned we have to take care of all we are given. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw how you handled your responsibilities, even when you didn't feel good, and I learned that I would have to be responsible when I grow up. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw that you cared, and I wanted to be everything that I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I learned that most of life's lessons that I need to know to be a good and productive person. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked at you and wanted to say, thanks for all the things that I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. So in closing, everybody is a somebody. And there is a somebody in everybody. We're all called to serve creation. And when we listen to that still small voice and heed that call, that's when our true spiritual growth begins. God has equipped each and every one of us with a unique spiritual gift that are meant to be used and bless others. When we commit ourselves to this practice of sacred, loving service, blessings move through us and to us. So today, I stand up here as Reverend Ken Fendrick. But in reality, I'm somebody else. Namaste.